All right, welcome everyone. My name is Shawn Moore. I am a director with the Elizabeth Dole Foundation. And of course, as I speak, my voice is going to go out right as we get started. Happy Monday and tax day. So it's kind of fitting that that would happen, right? So today we are going to talk about navigating a new normal. And for some of you all, you may be in the thick of caregiving, you're in the middle of it, you've been doing it for a while, and it may not be a new normal to you. Others of you may be just starting out, especially when we talk about finances. I think no matter where you're at along your caregiving journey, finances are sometimes something we ignore because we just don't know where to start. And then as we get into caregiving and we're in the thick of it, and we know we need to pay attention to what our finances are going to look like as end of life, all of us are going to pass away at some point in time. And one of the things that I talk about the most is for all you caregivers that are on the call, are you set up for success when caregiving ends? And that is something we oftentimes don't want to think about. But when you are caregiving and you're caregiving someone with mental or physical health challenges, Alzheimer's, cognitive decline, this is something that is so very important. Some of you on the call know me, some of you don't, but I'm going to share a little bit. I was a caregiver for my husband who spent 23 years in the Army, and he recently, about 6 weeks ago, passed away. So when I tell you that you want to make sure that your finances are set up for success when caregiving ends, it is so very important. I'm so very passionate about you all making sure that when your loved one passes away, you're not having to deal with all this other external things that are going to take place so that you can grieve and take care of the rest of your family that is left behind. So without further ado, we are going to make sure we're keeping track of questions in the chat. We have some already that were submitted ahead of time, but I want to introduce our panelists. So I'm going to go and I'm going to call on each one of you. If you will introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about you, why you've come to this place, and why you're so passionate about making sure our caregivers can navigate this new normal wherever they're at along their journey. All right, without further ado, how about we start out with Katie from the USAA Education Foundation. Hi, Katie.
Hi, thank you so much, Shawn, for the nice intro. And I am so pleased to be here today with Mondy and Karen and Shawn. Again, my name is Casey-Macias. I'm a certified financial planner professional with the USAA Educational Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit, and our mission is to lead and support and inspire actions that improve the financial readiness for the military and local community. So today we're talking specifically about caregiving for individuals with dementia, and I am so excited to learn from Mondy and Karen today. And my attorney said I had to say a little disclaimer. So while I am a certified financial planner, my presentation here is not intended to give individual financial, legal, or tax advice. And I encourage everyone to seek the advice of professionals, financial, legal, tax advisors in your local area. A little bit of background about me. I'm a military spouse. I've been in financial services for about 8 years now. But the challenges of caring for someone with dementia are really personal for me too. My grandmother lived with us for years when I was in high school and beyond. And recently my mother-in-law moved into memory care after her level of care needed was beyond what our family could provide. So this is really personal for me, and I'm looking to learn more from Karen and Mondy and all of you on the call today. So thanks for having me.
Thank you so much, Katie, and you're so spot on. As much as we're going to try to give you a well-rounded overview, everyone's situation is different, especially in the veteran landscape and our veteran population, because some things depend on whether you served pre 9/11, other times post 9/11, and everything in between. Is it a service-connected disability? Is it not? How long have you been disabled? So many different things. So we'll give you some resources towards the end if you're wanting some more personal one-on-one things that can help you out. So without further ado, Karen, can you please introduce yourself and tell us where you're from and why you're so passionate about this subject?
Sure. My name's Karen Stobbe, and I live just outside of Asheville, North Carolina, in a little bitty town called Black Mountain. And mine is personal also. My dad served in World War II as a bombardier in B-17s, and he passed away from Alzheimer's in 2000. And a year later, my mom was diagnosed, and she lived with us for 11 of the 17 years that she had dementia. And it's a very personal passion for me to make sure that people understand how to be with a person living with dementia. And not just, I mean, over 75% of the people live at home, not in nursing homes, not in assisted livings. And we kind of forget about us families sometimes and focus just on the care communities. And so that is what I love doing, is helping people understand how to have a better life at home and have a good day.
I love that. As you can tell, to everyone that has joined our call, we're all here for something, right? We all have something in our past. We're caregivers as well. So we're very, very passionate about supporting others of you who are family caregivers who are in the thick of it. Mondy, how about you?
Hi.
Welcome.
Well, thank you. I'm Monday Carter. I'm Karen's husband, and so I'm also in Black Mountain, just 2 floors beneath her, and yeah, and we took care of Karen's mom and for a long time, and our daughter grew up while Karen's mom was going through her disease and dementia. And we all learned a lot. Karen and I met doing improv comedy, and we did a lot of it, and we still do a lot of it. And Karen figured out that some of the ideas that you put into improv comedy can also be applied to caregiving, which has been an exciting thing for a lot of people. It also helps with communicating with people with dementia, which is also one of the things that we really want to get across to people, that you can cause yourself so many fewer problems, and your solutions are right there waiting for you. But you have to be able to trust yourself in the beginning. And so we really are excited to be here to help share what we know, and also to help to hear about financial planning, because that's something I'd like to know more about.
No matter where we're at in life, we can always learn in regard to financial planning. All
Yeah.
right, so thank you so much for each one of you being here. Let's dive into some topics. I'm going to start with Katie because I want to ask this question, and then I'm going to follow up with Karen and Mondy, so you can bring in your perspective of, okay, now we know this, but how do we talk to our loved one? And we got questions around that, right? So Katie, what are a few things that caregivers can do, no matter what stage of caregiving they're in, from a financial planning perspective? What's our first things that we should start out with?
It's a great place to start. So, really, the best place to start is to have the conversation. And I know it is difficult to talk about money. Everyone has a different relationship on how and if they talk about money, but I really encourage you to start those conversations. It's an ongoing, it's not a one and done, like you can check that box and move on to the next thing. It might be piecemeal, it might take some time, but I really encourage you, with a condition like dementia that is progressive, have the conversations now while you can, to clarify what your loved one's wishes are, what their perspective is, and what resources and things that they have in place currently and how they see their future too. So that's the first thing, is having those conversations and starting those conversations. And you don't have to get everything figured out all at one time. It's going to take some time. So don't put so much pressure on yourself that you have to have everything taken care of immediately. The next thing I'd say is to understand the day-to-day finances. What are the inflows and outflows on a regular basis? Get that baseline so that you understand what is happening and if there's any big changes coming up. As we know, care can get more expensive over time, more costly over time. So having a really good understanding of the day-to-day finances can help you prepare for potential changes in the future. Third thing is to understand those assets and liabilities, meaning what does the person have property? I mean, there's all different kinds of caregivers. I know we may be talking to some spouses, we may have adult children or siblings or friends, close friends that are caring for somebody they love with dementia. So there's a lot of, like Shawn said previously, every situation is different. So I just want to caveat that, but help understand that person's assets and liabilities. What is their kind of overall financial situation? And then the last piece, the fourth thing, is really estate planning. I think we'll go into some of the more specifics on estate planning, but having those conversations about estate planning are really key to caring for someone with dementia.
Oh, Katie, thank you so much. That is some great, great advice. If we don't have the conversations and our loved one happens to pass away, there's going to be so many more questions because we want to do right by our loved one. Yet if we've never had the conversation, it's going to be really hard, and all that's going to set on you. All that is going to set on you. And the other thing that I love that you said, know what your assets and liabilities are, know what's coming in, and know what's going out. Because we all know in a crisis, it's really hard to find those things. And after a loved one passes away, y'all, I'm speaking from a very real and not too long ago personal experience here. At least I didn't have to worry about where everything was at. It was in one place. I knew what was coming in, going out, and I was very well versed in our finances. So that was one thing that was just, it was already on rote. I didn't have to think about that. Trust me, you don't want to have to think about those things when your loved one dies. Now, Katie, you mentioned communicating, and I think this is when our improv team comes in.
Yes.
How can we communicate appropriately with someone that may be in a cognitive decline or dementia? Maybe people on this call aren't there yet, but they may be at some point in time. So that large gamut here of whether we're in the thick of it or whether we're starting back here, how do we foster trust, Carrie and Mondy, with Karen and Mondy, with your veteran, your care recipient? And how do we approach the conversation if they're reluctant about talking about finances?
I'll start with if you have the opportunity when a person is early in their dementia. One thing that my mom was trying to figure out, because, the generation that they came from was, she didn't know anything. I mean, she didn't even have a checkbook till probably like 30 years into the marriage. He gave her cash, and that's the way it went. And so before Daddy was even diagnosed, we knew something was happening, and we decided to come up with a plan of her saying to him that she was curious and that she was wondering if he could teach her, and putting it into that kind of language and making him the teacher and her the learner, even though he was experiencing early signs. That was perfect. And he really loved that role. And so she was able to learn where everything was, how to even balance the checkbook, where the bank accounts, where the stocks were, everything, by just that phrase. And so I think that's an important, when the person is still cognizant enough to share that information with you. But then if you're at the place where the person is further along and they are very defensive, because everybody knows money is a topic that no one wants to talk about. And so if it's that, Monday, you want to take it from there?
Sure. Yeah. Money is very personal. People have their identity wrapped up in it. And so that's why sometimes you don't even want to approach the topic. So being open to where the other person is coming from is really important. So understanding who you're caring for is very, very important. So if you can diffuse the situation by talking about it in the abstract as much as possible before you bring it into a conversation between you and the other person, talking about what other people have done in other situations, making it about, hypothetical people, generating an interest. Karen's mom's technique of teaching, being taught, may not be something that's appropriate for everybody, but what it showed is this mutual level of respect. If you're constantly communicating to the other person that you respect them, and you really do, and you're honest about that, you're always going to be in a better place. You're always going to be in a better place to assess what's going on when something is surprising and perhaps challenging, or maybe when something is surprising and maybe positive. Sometimes I think it's really good that we're doing both ends of our personalities here. We're talking about planning for every contingency financially, and then we're talking about, with improv, we're talking about, well, what do we do when surprises happen? Because that's life. Life is just surprising. And so if you understand what your motivations are, why you're doing what you're doing, and what is in the present moment, what is actually here and available, then you generally will have more of an ability to connect on difficult topics, because you'll understand you're on firm ground. Why are you doing what you're doing? Because you're trying to help this person. You care about them and you want them to be happy. And what is it that is available immediately? Well, you've got the other person and you've got this situation. So you know what you're doing coming into the situation. So you're prepared. But improv is about saying yes to the surprising. And we'll go into more details about that further on. But there's ways to prepare yourself for what you didn't plan for.
And one quick other thing is, I'm remembering the conversation, because it's another hard conversation, is when to stop driving. And I remember this conversation with my mom, is that we were trying to figure out the best way. Well, we decided that let's come at it from her favorite place. So where was her favorite place? Sitting in her recliner with a bowl of ice cream. And that was her favorite place. So we decided, let's all have ice cream. Let's all sit and be comfy. And then let's start bringing it up and just talking about our problems that we've had sometimes when we're driving, and if she's having any. And so always offering that you sometimes are the same. That can help the person feel more comfortable too. So for any of those hard conversations.
And you are the same. I mean, even though the person is dealing with dementia or whatever problems they might have, traumatic brain injury, whatever, they feel like them. They feel like they look at themselves and they go, I'm me. And then they got this thing that's happening that's keeping them from what they want. And they're still the same person. And so, if you connect to the other person and go like, we're all the same, we're in this together, and they understand that. And they may not always understand that. That might go out the door, but at least you get that. And then that's something they can latch back onto again. So, yeah.
Oh, smart advice. I love, Karen, when you said, come at it with curiosity and one of teach me, and it gives them more control. It gives your care recipient more control that they may feel like they're losing. I know as a caregiver, we often times feel like we're losing control as well. So it's really easy for us to, if we're in control, we can solve and handle everything, which unfortunately, yes, I may be speaking from experience here. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, right? So giving that control back to your care recipient, it's going to make them feel empowered, just like we want to feel empowered, but especially when you've got dementia, your cognitive decline, you have cognitive decline, that's scary. Now, on the other side, for a caregiver, I know for me, one of the reasons why I was asking, hey, what do you want at your funeral? Things like that is because really I was coming from a place of kind of being scared. And for me, if I knew what I didn't know, then it gave me more of a sense of control. And sometimes when we feel really, really out of control. And we have to laugh through this too. That's why we've got the improv experts on this call as well. So Katie, back to a financial question. So what are some signs that could indicate your loved one is having difficulty managing their finances?
There could be a few different things. It could be, I mean, you know your loved one better than anybody. So when you see changes in behavior or things happen, you're like, that's weird. That's new. I haven't seen that happen before. That is things you'll. Some of these things I think you'll kind of know, but from a financial perspective, some of the things that you could potentially see are unopened bills, mails piling up, they have utility bills, or like we talked earlier about assets and liabilities, maybe they have a car note or something that those bills aren't getting opened and they aren't getting paid. And sometimes you can even see, utilities shut off and thought, wow, how did that happen? It just got overlooked. Oh, I thought I paid it. Nope, maybe not. So that might be one of the signs that you'll see. Another thing could be like you see multiples of items that maybe like oatmeal. Let's say that you see 4 big jugs of oatmeal and you think, one person lives here or 2 people live here, and you just bought oatmeal last week. So maybe seeing, and again, these things that are unusual, that are different changes from what you've seen before. So those are some of the kind of the initial signs that you might see that could kind of lead you to say, hey, let's look at this a little bit deeper and see if we can get some more information on holistically what's happening financially.
I love that. What do you think? One of our participants sent in a question prior
Mhm.
to our webinar asking, what are some signs of when to look into guardianship? And all of you have personal experience around this as well. So please, everyone, feel free to chime in. But we have this. Are there resources for when this may be an issue when you're looking into guardianship? What does that look like? And what does that look like to your finances?
Mhm. Um, so again, I would say that really can depend where you're located. That is very much like a locality, a state, consideration. So first, I would say speak to a legal expert where you're located and find out what that process looks like. We would recommend. We're going to talk some more about estate planning in a minute, but like a power of attorney, durable power of attorney, is really important to have in place. If you don't have that in place, you may have to go that guardianship route, and with support from your medical professionals and an evaluation and those kinds of things to get a guardianship in place. But again, I'll defer to a legal expert in your location.
So there are attorneys who are very well versed in estate planning, and that would be something that you may want to look into in regard to that. Karen, Mondy, any tidbits from you?
She got it. But I did have someone ask me recently the difference between power of attorney and guardianship. Could you speak to that, Katie?
So a power of attorney is when someone of sound mind and capabilities is able to give consent to somebody else. So like if I want to give a power of attorney to my husband or another person I trust for financial matters or healthcare decisions, I can do that of my own. I am able to legally do that. If I'm not of sound mind and I'm not able to make that decision, that is where a guardianship conversation would come in. So, and again, like that really is getting into the specifics of how that's defined, and you'd have to have the involvement of like a medical professional and also legal advice to go that route and make that decision. But that's an important thing, because as we know, like I'm sure with the caregivers that are on the call, everyone is at a different stage of this journey. And so, ideally you want that person to be able to make that choice to do the power of attorney early on and have those conversations, but that might not be the case for everybody.
Yeah. And for both my dad and my mom, there's 6 of us kids. So we made the choice for one person to be power of attorney and one person to be power of healthcare,
Hmm.
so that one was over the money and one was over
Yeah.
health. And it worked out really well for us.
Yeah.
And we were fortunate that we didn't have to go down the guardianship
Right.
um, role there. So
Yeah. And
yeah.
it again, like it can be really complicated and be challenging with multiple family members and people involved. It's great to have like all that support, but it can also be challenging. So going back to the very beginning, start having those conversations when you can, and you don't have to solve it all at one time, but it's important to start those conversations.
Yeah.
And they can be scary conversations to have, especially because when you're dealing with dementia, everybody basically goes through like those stages of denial, and like
Mhm.
people don't want to accept that something's changed,
Right.
and they especially don't want to accept something has changed if it's a parent or somebody who's like really close to them. And it seems weird, but our sense of who we are is tied up in our connections, in who we are connected to, and who's important to us. In some ways, we define ourselves by these people we love. And that's why we can sometimes get angry with them, because they are not behaving like themselves, because we feel threatened to our core because we're connected that way. Understanding that connection is happening and understanding why you're getting so hot about it helps you get some distance and turn that temperature down. And then these conversations can happen.
And where possible, bring in, other professionals that can help navigate through the process. It might be mediation or other medical or legal professionals that can be part of the conversation and sort of take some of the focus off. If there is some contention or some conflict, it can help take some of that away by diverting to a professional that can help advise you on what the path forward could look like and what might be the best path forward for that for your loved one.
That was one of the benefits of Karen's dividing up the power of attorney between more than one sibling, because it wasn't just like, because sometimes if it's someone's controlling the money, you're like, oh, they're controlling the money,
Mhm.
And
Right.
so if you divide it up, then it's just not one boogeyman. Like, not one person gets saddled with
Mhm.
what could be kind of a
Mhm.
heavy burden.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and I wanted to say that my legal professional advised me to say people should consult a theater professional in your local area.
Perfect.
Love that. So for those of you that may not know, since Katie brought up power of attorney, it's important also to understand that when someone passes away, those end. A power of attorney ends. And I know we'll go into estate planning, but I say this because I was questioned whether I had a power of attorney after my husband died. And I'm like, that's him giving me permission. And now that he passed away, he can't give me that permission. So the power of attorney that I had is no longer valid. This was me talking to someone that I thought would have known that. So all that to say, when you are educated about these things, you can push back. And I pushed back, and they finally came up with the right answer. But you know best. We have to educate ourselves before. So I know we'll go more into estate planning because there's something that takes a place of a power of attorney and is definitely needed. But one thing that I'd like to ask Katie is, with those with dementia, those who are disabled, and in the veteran space, we see this a lot. People can be more vulnerable to financial abuse and fraud. What are some signs of potential fraud, and what steps can we take to minimize that risk?
Yeah, this is a really this is really challenging, and a sad part about vulnerable communities sometimes are targets for unsavory people and for scams and for financial abuse. And so it's really, really important from a protection standpoint to help minimize that risk. So some of the signs that you could potentially see are like unusual or large purchases where it just doesn't make sense that, that amount of money would be coming out of someone's account, or why are they buying this thing for this other person, and what's that relationship? Um, and kind of related to that, is there missing money? Are there unexplained withdrawals in this person's account? Do they normally have a certain kind of a baseline, kind of like we were talking earlier, the importance of knowing what's coming in and what's going out, to have that baseline? Is there a kind of a radical shift happening and you're like, what happened? Or, where'd that go? That could be a sign. Sometimes, people are pretty trusting and get a nice story from somebody and they think, oh yeah, I want to help this person, and they can really, really take advantage of them, and sometimes that person might not have experience or knowledge of some of the newest ways people are scammed. I mean, there's always like something new, different, phishing, smishing, all of the things. There are a lot of ways that unscrupulous actors are trying to get a hold of people's money. So the signs are that there might be some big shifts. So keep aware for that. And some things that you can do maybe to minimize those risks with the person that you're taking care of. You could agree to a certain amount of spending on like a particular card. I've heard of people having a separate account that has just a certain amount of money that their loved one has that freedom to do whatever they want with that money, and then when it's gone, it's gone. And there isn't an opportunity for a greater risk of loss with maybe the bulk of their assets that they're really relying on for care. So those are a couple things that you can do. You can set up automatic payments on bills. We talked earlier about, maybe bills not being paid. You can set up automatic auto pay on your bills. Request electronic statements and go through those on a regular basis. And even if there's a large purchase or withdrawal, you can set up notifications for those so that you know when it happens. And if it looks a little fishy, maybe look into it and get a little more information. And if it is fraud, you've caught it right away and can report it.
Karen or Mondy, any additions to that?
Not really, but I'm going to just touch on the opposite in the sense of when my dad went in the nursing home, they told us, don't send his wallet, don't do this, don't do that, right? And we just didn't question anything. And then one day he was walking around kind of slapping back here and saying he needed to get home. And he wasn't going towards the door to go out the door. He was just saying he needed to go home. And it took us a little while, but then we figured out he wanted his wallet.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, oh, so that's where he thought his wallet was at home, which it was. So we kept his license in there and put some other cards and things,
mm-hmm.
gave him a checkbook that had a closed account,
Mm-hmm.
gave him his gold and silver pen that he always had in his front pocket. And it restored a little bit of who he was, that he was this man who was an architect and took people out for lunch. And so the end of that is that about 2 weeks later, everybody in the nursing home wanted to sit with him for dinner because he would pick up the check by writing a check in his checkbook, and he asked for a bill. And so that kind of restored, and it also like gave him a whole lot of friends because he just kept writing checks to everybody and everything. So yeah, so there's that kind of opposite part too.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
The one thing I wanted to point out or mention is that if you discover that someone's, taking advantage of them, you have to be careful with the fact that they've placed their trust in this person and now that trust has been abused. And that is a very, very vulnerable place for the person to be in. Mm-hmm. So you have to be very respectful of the sort of Jenga tower of their feelings that is happening there. They're being abused in a way, and so they could feel bad at that revelation and then feel bad for being duped. And so, just because you think they ought to have known better, or whatever the judgment is, just make sure that you're paying attention to what they got out of the relationship to begin with. People don't do things without reasons. There was something that was being satisfied in that relationship. It was being satisfied improperly, so it shouldn't continue. But there was some motivation to that. So what is that? What did that give them? I mean, Karen's story about her father writing the check, it gave him this, being able to write a check, gave him this sort of sense of identity. And so this relationship, even if it's bad, gives them something. If you can find out what it is, you may not find out what it is. You might ask that question and not get an answer, but it's always good to ask that question. It'll get you going in the right direction.
But it could be as simple as, I remember my mom at Adult Day, we brought in this big cake for her birthday. And she loved giving away pieces of cake to people. And even if they already had a piece of cake, she wanted to give them another piece of cake. And I said, Mom, they already have cake. She goes, that's okay. I like them saying thank you. And I thought, when do people say thank you to older persons living with dementia? They're always saying thank you because everybody's doing things for them. And so it might be just that need to do something for someone else. And so that might be that you need to help them have some experience where they can help, not monetarily, do it in a different way.
Yeah. And it shouldn't be thought of like, oh, here's another thing I have to do. Maybe this is something that can make life easier. If you follow that route, then all of these other signs, like people, all these sort of other mysterious behaviors that you have trouble with will tend to stop because a need is being answered.
Yeah.
So smart. Such great tips from all of you, from the big tips to the small tips and just little ways that we interact with our loved one. I just love it. All right, so we have a couple of questions centering around estate planning and specifically trusts, trust versus wills, and what does take the place of a power of attorney when someone passes away, a will, and what that looks like and how we can put those in place before the crisis. Talk a little bit about that, Katie. What does estate planning look like? How do we set ourselves up for success?
Okay. So we have what we call our 5 key estate planning documents. And the first one of those is a will. And a will, I'm going to read you the word for word definition that we have just to make sure that it's clear. A will outlines who should receive assets, nominates a guardian for minor children, and names an executor to carry out your wishes. So a will is a legal document. It has to be prepared by an attorney or notarized, and it's just a foundational document that everybody should have, not just someone with dementia, but everybody. As a caregiver, it's important that you have a will for yourself as well. So, and all of these things, it's important. Sometimes caregivers focus so much on the person that they're caring for that maybe they don't have the time or feel like they don't have the time to attend to their own financial situation or their own estate planning. But it is very important for you as an individual to have those in place on your own behalf as well. So a will is going to outline where your stuff goes, who it goes to. There are some things in your estate that don't pass according to a will, like life insurance benefits are passed by beneficiary. If your loved one has a life insurance policy, or if they have workplace retirement accounts, those accounts pass by beneficiary. So that's why it's important to know what your loved one has and review those beneficiaries on a regular basis. If your life changes and you don't update your beneficiary, it's going to go to the person who's named on the policy. The second document is that power of attorney, and that gives someone else, you can provide someone else, we talked about that a little already, it can provide someone else permission to act on your behalf, be it for healthcare, for financial matters. I mean, there's all different kinds of powers of attorney. So I'll leave it to, your consultation with an attorney to discuss the specifics for those. Another important document is an advanced medical directive. That is a legal document that states your wishes for end-of-life care and what treatment you do and do not wish to have. And then a trust. So we'll talk a little bit about a trust. There's lots of different types of trusts. It's a legal arrangement that is designed to achieve specific goals during life or at death. There is a particular kind of trust called a special needs trust that might be appropriate for your situation. Really, to find the right fit for you, you really need to meet with an attorney and talk about your unique specific situation and what you're trying to achieve with the trust. I don't know if that answered the question or if there's more detail to go into.
I think that's great information. What is the benefits or the pros, cons in regard to trust versus will? Not everyone needs a trust.
Right. Right.
Sometimes a will be sufficient, sometimes
Yeah.
not.
Exactly. So a will is goes through a process called probate, and probate is a public process, and it can take time. It can be kind of costly. There are a lot of different types of trusts, but there are ways to set up a trust so it's like irrevocable versus revocable. I mean, there's just so much with the trust, and a trust really is sort of like a legal arrangement that can hold property, and it's in the name of the trust, not in the name of an individual. Like a will is for an individual.
And I think I want to make sure that we say this again, because this is where it becomes so specific to that person, individualized what is going on in your situation. Depending on the size of the estate, or not. Let me just put that out there, or not, or whether you're a spouse and you're on accounts with your loved one. Some of those things, they don't go through probate. So it's so individualistic that you really, really do need to make sure that your situation is in front of someone that can give you personalized advice. Another thing that in estate planning that I think about that we can do now, that was a lifesaver for me, title on deaths, in regard to cars, things like that. And also your bank accounts. Is there just the care recipient's name on there? And if so, what's going to happen to that? Why you want to have your name on that as well? Maybe why you don't.
Yeah, and again, kind of going back to the conversation about trust and how and transfer on death, and those kinds of details on your accounts. It all depends on what your goals are. It depends on what you want to get out of what you want to get out of that arrangement. Do you want to have property or assets go to a certain person, and in what way do you want them to go to that person? And so it really is an individual, driven by your individual goals and your individual situation and your loved one's condition. Everybody doesn't need a trust. It doesn't necessarily make sense for everyone, and they can maybe achieve all the goals that they want through TODs, transfer on death, or through their will, or how they're through like beneficiary designations on policies and that sort of thing. So it might not be for everybody, but again, consult with a legal professional in your area to get more information.
Any thoughts, Karen and Mondy? Or anything that we can add humor and improv to in these discussions?
Sure. I have a question for Katie, though. I wonder, what do people do that don't have any money to worry about?
That's a good question. And we even say estate planning is not for people with money. Estate planning is for everybody. I mean, not for people with like large sums of money. Estate planning is for everybody. And it's for anybody that wants to minimize conflict, cost, and confusion at their passing. It again, it goes back to having those conversations over time, that it can really help take away some of the stress and some of the pressure of that time after somebody's loss, and make it so you can focus on your loved one and your other family members, instead of worrying about the financial side of the house at the time. So
Yeah.
it really can make it, it's for everybody. And having these conversations and making sure your loved ones are aware of what your wishes are, really goes a long way in minimizing that conflict, confusion, and cost.
Yeah, I think just people have a misconception about when they
Yeah.
hear estate planning that you need an estate.
Yeah, and
And
everybody, I mean, everyone has an estate. Everyone, look around your room that you're sitting in right now, and think about the things that you own that are important to you, even if they don't have a monetary value, maybe broadly, but they're important to you, and what happens to those things is important to you. You can outline that in your estate planning documents, and chances are there's probably more things that are of value to you, both monetarily and non-monetarily, than you realize. And so for that reason, estate planning can really help everybody, both the person with dementia and their loved ones.
I
yeah,
think
Absolutely.
the
Yeah, go ahead.
the sort of way in which you can not be approaching the topic like, now we're going to be talking about you dying.
Exactly. Yeah.
It's more if you're focusing, like you say, on this stuff, the things that they care about. It's like, well, you care about this car, you care about the fact that you had this collection of things, and they love talking about things that they care about. Well, where do you want this? Think about where this might be in 50 years from now, long after we're both gone. What's going to happen to it? And then that gets things moving in the right direction positively, without it being this sad thing that we have to go through.
Right.
yeah,
Right.
Talking about stuff you love.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and
yeah,
I think for caregivers too, if you go in it that you're setting things up for not only your care recipient, but for you as well. Like you're doing a will as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're as
Mm-hmm.
alongside them as well. Funeral planning, you're doing it together. It's not just about them passing away, it's you too. So do it as a team, whether that's your spouse, a partner, an adult child, a sibling, a friend, whoever that is, you can still do that together. And I think that takes it off of, well, I'm just waiting for you to pass away here and let's get this stuff taken care of, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
That's scary
Exactly.
to all of us.
Yeah.
Now, Katie, in regard to trust, is there one specific to a home?
Um, so you can put a home in a trust. And again, there are lots and lots of different types of trusts. And when there's living trust, there are lots and lots of types of trusts, and it depends on, like, attorneys are licensed by the state, so it depends on the state that you're in too. And so a home can be put in a trust, and the trust be titled under the trust. That is possible, but I would really refer you to an attorney to talk specifics for your situation, and what the benefit and what the goal that you're trying to accomplish by doing that for your
Absolutely.
situation. Mhm.
I think that's so important. I know when I was researching things around my loved one passing away and what I needed to do and should do and
Mhm.
could do, it was so specific to state as well. So
Yeah.
that's why
Mhm.
all on the call, sometimes we're giving a very high overview of these questions because it's not specific to everyone. It's very individualized.
Mhm.
Mondy?
Oh, well, you were saying that, make sure that you let them know that you're part of the team and be on the team. But sometimes you might be caring for somebody who's not a team player. But that doesn't mean that that's always going to be the case. that person was probably a team player with somebody else. They were probably used to being on some sort of team. And if you are put yourself in a position to be trustworthy and continually open to have them join the team that you are setting up for them, then as change happens, as it inevitably will, then they will fall into your team. But you got to be patient for it sometimes. It's not as,
Absolutely. Such, yeah, great
it can sound
advice.
like this is easy, and it's never easy.
Yeah, it isn't easy. And
Yeah.
one of the questions we got too was um, really preparing for life after caregiving. And again, since I just recently went through it, I want everyone to know if I hadn't had set up things prior to that, i.e., having my own bank account, and again, it was my spouse. I still had my own bank account because sometimes bank accounts go offline when you say someone has passed away and then you don't have access to that account for a bit. You want to make sure you've got access to the account. Um, Setting yourself up financially. Again, I really, really encourage each one of you to ask yourself, if caregiving ends today, tomorrow, am I going to be okay financially? Ask yourself that. And if you say no, why not? Why not? Do you not have a will? Does your loved one not have insurance, life insurance? Do you not know whether you're on the policy? Do you not work? There are so many things that you really need to pay attention to. We all know our veterans have a shorter life expectancy to a lot of our civilian counterparts, just due to the nature of their physical and mental challenges. We know that. So since we know that, we've got to start now. And it's never too late to start either. For any of you on the panel, what are some really tried and true tips, experiences that each one of you have gone through in regard to setting yourself up for success after caregiving?
I think the interesting thing is we were able to work more. So we weren't able to work as much uh, because of needing to care for mom. And I think that happens to a lot of us, that all of a sudden, instead of working part-time, you're able to work full-time or take another job. And so that's a whole new world for you. And then I think that if you're prepared in all these other ways, including financially, then I think you mentioned it in the beginning there, Shawn, that you're able to grieve. And if you're not able to grieve, you're not able to take care of yourself or anybody else around you, and or to continue to work if you wish. So, you know, that's really important. And you know, as caregivers, boy, we learn to feel guilty just about anything. And even after the person has passed away, we feel guilty for this and that. And I think that's another thing. If we can understand and try and not have so much guilt on ourselves and beat ourselves up for the good job that we're doing, then we'll feel we'll feel better, and we'll be able to handle the grieving process a lot better too. So I think for us too, with some of the improv guidelines of going with the flow and stepping into their world and understanding what they're going through, I think that helped us throughout as mom was getting worse and worse, that we were able to understand it a little bit better. And I think it really prepared us for what I like to call a good death, in the sense that we feel she had a good death. And so, and I think daddy too. And I think that that can really help us overall.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'd say too, kind of from the financial planning side, is having the habit and the practice of doing things like looking at accounts and budgeting and knowing before you really maybe have to, having that habit built in so that you have a understanding of where you're at. And then when things change, and if you have to drop it for a little while and you come back to it, it's not brand new and you're not having to figure out everything all at one time. So I think building that habit, building that knowledge, little by little is can be really, really helpful and really, really valuable.
Mondy, some final thoughts here?
Well, I think it's generally about the story that you're in. Know why you're doing what you're doing, and you'll continue to be able to do what you need to. I think Karen covered everything about the process of know that once you know that you had a good death, or you saw that your loved one had a good death, it does go a long way towards making grief easier. And so giving yourself that gift, giving yourself, your loved one, that gift by trying to accept things as they come, trying to accept your own limitations as not faults, but just facts.
So spot on. Gosh, you all, an hour has gone by very, very quickly.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
Right?
I want to make sure that everyone checks out Karen and Mondy's website in the moment. Also, there's, great tips, tools, so many things on their website. The USAA Educational Foundation has some wonderful tips in regard to finances and caregiving. There is a caregiving life event that we just put together that may be assistance for you. And the Elizabeth Dole Foundation, please go to our website. There are some resources for you on there as well. We have a critical financial assistance program for caregivers that we'd love for you to check out as well. We are so, so grateful to Karen, Mondy, Katie, for each one of you coming in and sharing all of your great tips, you being vulnerable and telling us your stories. It makes it real for each one of us. And the Rupe Foundation, they are a grant funder of ours who has done some excellent work in helping us put this together. Gosh, so many things. I want to thank our team on the back end that got all this together and pulled us all together. And please, we would love, love, love for you to reach out if you have any questions after this webinar. Please, info@elizabethdolefoundation.org, and we will work diligently to get your questions answered. And I will stick a few things in the chat as well. Any quick final thoughts from any of you?
Mine is, everybody asks me, what's the best advice for a caregiver? And I say two things. One, patience, and two, go with the flow. With whatever is happening, just go with it. Take that step into their world instead of trying to pull them into yours. Monday?
Oh, I leave them with your ideas. That's great.
My best tip is to just get started, have the conversations, get started today on managing your financial health and your financial well-being. You don't have to do it all at once, but you can do it little by little and get started today.
All right. Thank you again to each one of you. And as always, please continue to monitor our social media channels so that you can find out more about webinars such as this. We hope you all have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you, Shawn.
Thanks, Shawn.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Shawn.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.